Hi guys, so we're going to be finishing up this presentation hopefully in this video. Uh, let's just get straight into it. Last time we talked about our third way of taking tricks. If we scroll all the way back up here, we talked about long sweeps and how we can get tricks from that. And then today we're going to talk about the finesse. Sorry. Okay, so when we're talking about finesse, it's a lot easier to explain through an example. And basically, what it is, it's like a 50% chance of success. You either, and depends on where like the high cards are. So, for example, let's just take the first top left example. Here, we have ace queen opposite small small. Normally, this would be one trick. The ace is worth one trick, right? And the queen, it's not really an adjacent high card. So because it's not like adjacent to anything, so therefore we can't really count this as like two tricks normally. However, with the finesse, we may be able to take tricks on certain occasions. And this is a concept of like whether our cards, like I won't call them behind or in front of. Like, for example, let's look at one example where the king is here. Because we basically want to know where the card in the middle is. And so we want to know where the card in the middle is, and then and then there's going to be different outcomes depending on whether it's on our left side or on the right side. So let's first demonstrate if the card's on the left side, and remember, play goes like this. In this example, we say our ace queen is quote unquote behind the king, because we can play, and it's very important, we need to play small from the opposite hand, not the hand with all of if we play small from ace queen, if we led from ace queen, it wouldn't really work. Let's play small from like the opposite hand. In this case, it's the declaring hand. We're going to play small here, and now doesn't matter how many smalls this guy has, he's going to be in a problem, right? For example, and this is like sort of like every move is losing. If you play the king, right? Obviously in order to win this trick, we can play the ace. And notice how the ace and king are both out. Like after this trick, the ace and king will not exist in the deck, so therefore this queen will be high, and therefore we will get two tricks that way. However, you may ask, what if we play small? Well, if you play small, we can play the queen. And if we knew the king was here, right, we would play the queen, because if we play the ace, we're just kind of wasting it. And notice how the ace and king are again still both here, so therefore this person cannot possibly have a card higher than the queen. Sort of like top tricks, except well, your opponent has one of the top tricks. So that's sort of how you can think of it. Now, however, the king obviously doesn't have to be on this side. For example, if the king was on the other side, then what would happen? Well, this time we would say the ace queen is quote unquote in front of the king, or in other words, the king is quote unquote behind the ace queen. So, for example, if we play the ace, our opponents aren't stupid. Obviously, when they see the ace, they're like, not going to be like, oh yeah, they're playing the ace, I should play the king. No, they're obviously going to play small, right? And then when we play the queen, then they can play the king. So that's scenario one. However, in scenario two, even if we play the queen, our opponent, again, he's not going to be stupid. He's not going to play small less going to trick. He's going to instead play the king. And that's going to be one trick for them. And now we only have one trick left. So now we can see like when the king is on our left-hand side or in front of the ace queen, then we will get two tricks. But king is on the right-hand side or behind the ace queen, then we'll be getting only one trick. And this is because we get to decide. It's based on who decides after who. So, for example, if the king is on this side, we have to decide before. We have to play one of these cards, and then they can react to that. On the other hand, if the king was on the other side, then they would have to decide first. So they would have to decide first, and then we can react to that. And the correct play, by the way, is to play the queen. If I wasn't clear on that, because because the thing is, if West has a king, then we gain. But if East has a king, we don't actually lose. The only thing we lose is the tempo, but that's okay because we were never getting a trick anyways with the queen. So might as well take the 50% chance over the 0% chance. And when I say 0% chance, it's basically 0%. Theoretically, there's only one combination we lose against, and that's if our right-hand opponent has a single and king. And over here, we would play the ace, and then they can't play a small card. They're forced to play the king, and then our queen would be high. However, this is very, very unlikely, since that would require, in this example, our left-hand side to have 8 cards to Jack 10-9, which is, and it's a lot more likely that all we need is from lefty is to have the king. So therefore, the correct play is the queen. Another example is this. We would just normally evaluate this as an adjacent high card with one trick. However, same rules apply for as previously, except this time we're not missing the king. No, we're missing the ace. We can still finesse an ace. So, for example, and the same principle applies. If this person has the ace, then we can lead. Then we can lead from here, and then if he plays the ace, our king queen is good, right? Same logic as above. However, if he plays low, then we just going to win the king. That's going to be trick number one. And then here's the important part: we can't lead from queen small. Why? If we lead small, we're basically giving up our position on them, we're basically forcing ourselves to make a decision before them, and they can react to that now. But we don't really want to do that. We want to be able to react to what they do, right? So we have to get back to our hand using one of our entries, which we talked about earlier, and then we can play our second round. If he plays the ace, our queen's good. But if we play small, then our queen will still win. So it's like we win the king and then we repeat it. So we're going to repeat a finesse twice. And it's possible to repeat a finesse more than twice, like as we'll see in one of our later examples. The finesse can be repeated as many times as long as you have the entries. Now, if we had no more entries, we were stuck here and we had no more entries, it would be a lot more difficult to get two tricks. We still have to play low and play king, but with no entries back, we can't really finesse again, and now we're in a bit of a weird position, and realistically we can only expect one trick. Now, and that's another reason why entries are so important. They allow us to do this finessing type of thing and gain a few more tricks that way. Another example is this example. So, it seems at first that we can just finesse twice, right? This is like the same thing. Instead of missing like the ace, we're kind of missing the queen. So we can just finesse twice, right? Yes. However, we can make this play even better. So for example, we can catch righty with singleton queen. Well, that's kind of easy. I just play the ace, right? But we also lose the queen small, in which case we can play the ace and the king to get rid of it, right? However, playing the king will just, now we can't really finesse them, and yes, we'll get 3 tricks, but we'll always have 3 tricks via adjacent high cards. So playing the king is probably not a very smart idea. Now, what about the ace? At first, this may seem like you can't play the ace for the same reason. However, if we play the ace, consider what happens. We play small. We can still finesse twice, and the same logic applies. You see, if we remove our king, then if the opponent had the queen, they could just win it. It's now high. However, if we keep our king, this is still a finessing position. We can see that this is like ace queen, king jack, just sort of just like shifted down one, and we shifted it down because we played our ace. So that's how we shifted it down. Sort of like a finesse shifted down. Now, if we have the ace, this is of course still a finessing position. However, we can pick up one extra case by playing the ace first because it doesn't cost, right? This is still a finessing position. We can still get 4 tricks if the queen's onside. The only chance we gain is the very small probability of the singleton queen offside. And although this is a very small probability, it's still a non-zero chance. And bridge is all about maximizing our probability. We want to maximize our probability of success, and this is the way to do it. And one little trap here, actually, if we did not have this small card here, then the story would be a lot different. And if we play an ace here and play small, notice how we can finesse once, right? We can finesse once, but notice how this card will be gone after we finesse once, right? And there will be, and we could try to finesse again. However, what card are we going to finesse again with? We don't have enough cards in our hand to finesse again. If we could spawn another small card, yeah, sure, this would work, right? And in fact, that's the small card we just deleted. However, given the current layout, there's really no way to finesse again because we don't have another small card. So if you run out of cards, you can't finesse. That's another very big trap. So, and it's like the same thing. For example, if we had these 2 cards did not exist, we cannot finesse because we can't physically delete a card from our hand. So if we didn't have this card, then the correct play would be to finesse twice. Because although we will lose a singleton queen, right? This will be lose. We're gaining when this person has has queen fourth or longer. Queen third is the same because after we played the ace, if he has queen third is the same because after we play the ace, we only need to finesse once to get rid of this card, and then we can play the king dropping the queen. However, we gain queen fourth or longer, which is a lot higher chance than just a singleton queen. It's not worth sacrificing that chance. So yeah, depending if I have 3 cards or 2 cards, our play is completely different on that one. And finally, this example has appeared up a few times in both the adjacent high cards and long suits. But yes, theoretically, this is a finesse if we have enough entries. And to see why, this is going to be a finesse against the ace because we're missing the ace from we're solid except for the ace. So it's going to be like a finesse for the ace sort of. And usually when we talk about long suits, right, we have to consider break combos. So 3 to 2, it doesn't matter. We get 4 tricks anyways. They're going to take their ace regardless, so it doesn't really matter. However, the part where it matters is if it's 4 to 1, 4-1 or 5-0. So let's just say if C is 4-1 and the ace fourth is on our left hand side. At this point, we could just finesse 3 times, right? We could play low to the king, low to the queen, low to the jack, and if he wins at any time, then it's great. It's going to achieve the same result as we've seen in the past 3 examples. If you take it early, it doesn't matter if you take it early or late. You're screwed anyways. So at this point, he has only 1 ace left, and we have 2 cards over here. So therefore, we can just play a small card and knock out the ace, and our last card will be good via the long suits. So that example is sort of a combination of adjacent high cards, long suits, and finally our finesse. And that's why I like the example so much. And you'll be seeing this later from me as well. This example is just a good learner example. So that's basically it for the finesses. Just make sure you have enough entries and make sure you have enough cards, definitely. And now you may be thinking, oh, these adjacent high cards, aren't these also finesses? And the answer is, I guess, but just like how we can have not enough cards in the hand without the honors, we can also have not enough cards in the hand with the honors. If we add a small here, then yes, this is a finesse. However, we don't have if they just play the ace over here, we don't have a small card to play over here. That's not non-existent. So they're forced sort of crashing honor. So basically, the finesse is kind of useless to us. And last thing is this concept called I titled it time. I think it's more accurately called tempo, and basically so for example, if I have 13 tricks, right? I have 13 tricks. I have enough entries and all this stuff. You've seen how 13 tricks can become less than 13 tricks if we have entry issues, but there's also 13 tricks can also become less than 30 tricks if they take a trick first. So for example, we may have all 13 tricks, but if they have an 8, we may have 13 tricks in 3 suits, spades, hearts, and diamonds, but if they have the ace of clubs, then it doesn't matter how many tricks we have, they got 1 trick. And so the maximum we get is 12. And basically, we're just trying to, in no trump, we're just trying to see who can get to their target first. So for example, in 3 no trump, if they get we need 9 tricks right, which would give them 4 tricks. So they need to add 1 to this to get 5 tricks. And if they take 5 tricks, there is no way for us to take 9 tricks because there's only a total of 13 tricks. So the maximum we can take is 8 tricks. So we're trying to get to 9, they're trying to get to 5, and we're trying to see how quickly we can get it. How quickly we can get there. Can we get there before the other? So, and illustrate that, I can see, an example would be if he has king, queen, jack, fifth in 1 suit and ace in their suit. I have an ace in their suit and king, queen, jack, fifth in my suit. So, basically, the idea is that if they go first, we're screwed. Because they play low, we play the ace, and now they still have the ace over here, and we call this ace a stopper, and basically it just stops the opponents from taking all of their tricks in their suit, all of their potential in their suit. So we have to give a trick to this ace, right? When we inevitably play the suit. And then over here, he has 4 more winners, so he gets all his winners, and notice how I have to discard these 4 on my 4 winners. Even though I have 4 winners, I have no way of getting to them because I have to discard them on his winners. So basically, and this is basically just an effect of us not being in time. However, if we reverse these roles, let's say we go first. Well, now the important thing to do is not to waste your ace. We're going to keep our ace here because it is a stopper, and if we play the ace, we're just basically losing our tempo, and they'll get their tricks before us. We're in the same situation, but we don't have to be in the same situation. If we play the king and they play the ace, well, now they can knock out their ace. However, they can knock out their ace as well, right? They're not gonna be stupid. However, this time we have the tempo, and now we can play these 4 cards, and they have to pitch their 4 winners. So this time we're in time, because and that's just a really important aspect of keeping your entries, and that's just a really important aspect of just keeping your, or not entries, sorry, keeping your stoppers. I wrote a lot of other stuff on here, but maybe we'll cover that later. I don't know how long this video is going to be, but hopefully it's short enough to fit into one. And hopefully I explained everything well. And I have a summary slide if you guys want to pause here, but I think yeah. Okay, and I didn't include tempo on here for some reason, but yes, there's tempo. Alright, and that's it. That's the end of this presentation, and this is the end going to be an end of this playlist. And next up, we'll be talking about the defense. So we talked about how to play when we're declaring how we do, and then there's dummy, which I don't think there's much to explain. You just follow declarer's orders, and then finally there's the defense, which is arguably the hardest part. So stay tuned for that.